Hey, New Covenant family. It's Pastor David. Hope your week is going well. I just wanted to, as I mentioned on Sunday, we're going through the book of Hebrews together, and there's just not enough time on Sundays to cover all of the content of the letter, and so we're just going to be supplementing Sundays with some of these videos just to interject some of the additional comments and content from the letter. And so let's jump right in. When we went through Hebrews 1 in part 1 of the series, there was an entire section that I totally skipped. And we're going to go back and just check that out here together over the next few minutes. In Hebrews chapter 1, starting with verse 5 and then going all the way through verse 14, there are these continual quotes from the Old Testament. And almost all of these quotes are references back to prophecies concerning Jesus and concerning Jesus' place in above creation, particularly above the created beings of angels. And so we're just going to skim through these real quick and then make a point. So like in verse 5, the writer of Hebrews quotes Psalm 2, where the writer of Psalm 2 says, quotes, "You are my son, today I have become your father." And then he quotes 1 Chronicles chapter 17, "I will be his father and he will be my son." Of course, referring to a prophetic reference regarding Jesus, the Son, and God the Father. In verse 6, he quotes Deuteronomy 32. It says, "And again, when God brings his firstborn into the world," referencing Jesus, he says, "let all God's angels worship him." And so there's this, again, this reiteration of a hierarchy with Jesus being above the angels. And of course, we mentioned this, that in the Jewish mindset, angels took a high priority, but the writer to the Hebrews is establishing that Jesus is above the angels. Verse 7 in chapter 1, he quotes Psalm 104. And he gives the angels some cred here in this verse. He says he makes his angels spirits and his servants flames of fire. Okay, so the angels are ministering spirits and servants of flames of fire. But then he turns right around and quotes Psalms 45, another prophetic reference to Jesus, saying, "Your throne will last forever. Scepter of judgment will be the scepter of your kingdom. You've loved righteousness, hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has set you," meaning Jesus, "above your companions," meaning all of the angels, elders, any other created being in heaven. Jesus has been set above all of those other beings, and God anointed him with the oil of joy. Let's look at a couple more. In verse 12, he quotes Psalm 102, and he says that basically that the garments of Jesus will never perish, they will never change, they will remain the same, and his years will never end. And then in verse 13, he quotes Psalms 110, and he says this, which is really cool: "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet," which is just declares the victory that Jesus has won. So the writer of Hebrews is just establishing the divinity of Jesus. And the reason for that is this letter was written obviously before the destruction of the second tabernacle, before Herod's tabernacle was destroyed, because it's got all of these references in it to the tabernacle. So it's written before that. So there is it's easy for the Hebrews to understand the humanity of Jesus, because many of them would have lived during the time that he walked on the earth as a human. So it's easy for them to understand and embrace the humanity of Jesus. So the writer of Hebrews is just nailing down the divinity of Jesus. Even though you saw Jesus in the flesh, even though you saw him walk around, even though you saw him sweating out here in this hot desert, he is the second person of the Holy Trinity, firstborn of all creation. He is higher than the angels. And so I think the writer of the Hebrews is just to his Jewish audience reiterating and reaffirming that even though you saw Jesus in the flesh, he is divine. Now for us, that's not, most of us, that's not a difficulty. We didn't see Jesus in the flesh, so we don't always see him that way. We tend to see him as divine. We embrace his divinity more quickly usually than we do his humanity. That being the case, Hebrews chapter 2 helps us. In chapter 2, verse 14, the writer says this: since the children have flesh and blood, he too, meaning Jesus, shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds power over death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by the fear of death. So the Hebrew audience of the first century embraced Jesus' humanity because they saw him as a human. So the writer is nailing down, he's not only human, he's divine. For us today, we tend to embrace his divinity, but the writer of Hebrews nails down his humanity in chapter 2 and says, look, he's not only divine, he's not only the second person of the Trinity, he became one of us. He became flesh and blood. And so that's the dynamics of Hebrews 1 and 2 is just securing both the humanity and the divinity of Jesus Christ. Whether you are a Jewish Hebrew audience to which the letter was originally written, or if you're a Gentile audience like us today, it solidifies the balance that Jesus took on humanity and divinity. He's divine, he's able to save us, but he's also human. He experienced everything that we experienced. So hope that helps you today, hope that blesses you today, and we'll be putting more content out like this in between Sundays. God bless you. Have an awesome week.